a Sunni Arab politician. So they rejected the Constitution because it allows the formation of these regional confederacies and also gives those confederacies these natural resource rights, which will cut the Sunnis out. Now, one of the key strategies for the Sunni Arab guerrilla movement has been to try to take Baghdad. And in 2004 and 2005, they actually seemed at some points to be on the verge of doing so. Baghdad is at the center of the area where the Shiites and the Sunnis meet. The Shiites in the south coming up, the Sunnis in the north and west coming down. And Baghdad could go either way. Under Saddam, it was basically 50-50. Saddam was uncomfortable with 50-50. He was trying to make it more Sunni. And he planted Sunni families in the southwest of Baghdad, in northern Babel province. He took away land from Shiites and kicked them out and put Sunnis there. So there's kind of Sunnification. And I think similar things happened in Diyala in the northeast. So that area has been contested, and there are population movements, and the Shiite slum dwellers from the rural south have settled in East Baghdad. So the Sunnis, one thing they could do, I mean, they had multiple strategies. One was just to keep hitting the U.S. troops as much as they could to discourage the U.S. public and get the troops out. But another was to leverage their control of the northern and western hinterland of Baghdad so as to push the Shiites out of East Baghdad and make them move south. And so you had this constant attempts to cut off Baghdad from fuel, which were often quite successful. You had drives within Baghdad of ethnic cleansing of Shiites who lived in Sunni Arab neighborhoods, pushing the Shiites east and ultimately hoping to push them out of Baghdad altogether, and getting very near to the Green Zone. Even there were plots to take over the Green Zone, which is the center of the center of Baghdad where the U.S. And Iraqi government offices are, surrounded by blast walls and guarded by the Marines. But, and so this is what that particular civil war looks like. If you do a splatter diagram, you can see that it's the area right around Baghdad that's producing this this violence between Sunni Arabs and Shiite Arabs. And Baghdad was ethnically mixed. You can see Sunni and Shiite. Sunni and Shiite neighborhoods. So what turned things around was that in February of 2006, the Shiites had a shrine up in Samarra. It's a Sunni Arab area now, but historically there had been Shiites there. There's a Shiite neighborhood there, and they had a shrine there. Now in Shiite Islam, they have a strong messianic sense. It's like the evangelical Christians who think that Jesus is coming back any moment and will transform the world and so forth. Well, the Shiites believe that their promised one is coming back any moment. He is Muhammad al-Mahdi, and he was the 12th lineal descendant of the Prophet Muhammad. And he disappeared into a supernatural realm as a small child. He may be walking amongst us, but he's in occultation. He's disappeared. He's vanished. And he will, at some point, reveal himself. And when he does, the old world order is over with. And his father and grandfather have a tomb and a shrine in Samarra. So the Sunni Arab guerrillas knew that the Shiites of Iraq have become increasingly millenarian. They have this cult of the 12th Imam. Even the Mahdi army is named for this promised one. The word Mahdi means rightly guided. So they blew up the Samarra shrine, which used to look like that, and now looks like that, actually worse because they blew it up twice. And although they didn't kill anybody when they blew it up, it was the most successful piece of terrorism in modern world history because it just infuriated the Shiites. And they went out on the street with guns looking for Sunnis to kill. Any old Sunni would do. And they went into Sunni mosques and they shot down Sunni preachers. They then would torch the mosque. 4 were burned down. Over 50 were damaged. Maybe 100. And you know, the Sunni Arab guerrilla movement had been trying to provoke the Shiites to do this for some time because they thought you get a civil war going in Iraq, it's too hot for the Americans to stay. The Americans will leave, and then we'll finish off the Shiites and make a coup and come back to power. This was their plan. It was kind of a stupid plan, but this was their plan. And it really explains a lot of the violence in Iraq in the last few years. And so they finally got their wish, right? They finally, the Shiites had restrained themselves, and their Shiite leaders had said, no, don't fall for it. Keep public order. We're going to inherit Iraq, and don't take the bait. This is what Grand Ayatollah Sistani was telling the Shiites. He said at one point, he said, I don't care if the Sunnis kill half the Shiites in Iraq. We're not going to take revenge. Not going to have vendettas. But after this, they won't listen to him anymore. And they went after the Sunnis. And wasn't so much in February and March, although there was a lot of that kind of thing, but it grew each month. So by June, July of 2006, you had 2,000 and 3,000 people being killed a day. You started to have death squad activity at night, right under the nose of the U.S. troops. The Iraqi police had to establish a special unit in Baghdad of the corpse patrol. And I don't know, what kind of misbehavior you would have to engage in to get assigned to it. But at dawn every day, you had to go around with a cart looking for corpses of the death squad victims who had been killed and thrown in the street. And these would be people, it's typically Sunni Arabs, who were suspected by the Shiite militias of engaging in insurgent activities, of killing Shiites or whatever. And they would be found, hands bound behind their backs, one bullet behind the ear. It's very economical. It's the way the mafia does it. None of this stuff where you tie somebody up and hope he dies later on and so forth. That's somebody's dead. You shoot them behind the ear. So, and they were found by the UN, investigated this. They were found to have chemical burns, signs of electrical burns. These people were being tortured and then killed. And they were being tortured because the Shiite militias wanted to get information from them about Sunni Arab insurgent activities. So, I hope you can see this. This is from the New York Times recently. But that is June 2006, and already this stuff had been going on. But that's what Baghdad looked like. That the yellow stuff is the Shiites. So they have Sadr City, which, although it's compact, like that little square up there, that's half of Baghdad's population in there. That's very dense slums. And then it has some areas to the southeast, and the Qadamiyya area just across the Tigris. But you can see that the green parts are the mixed, and the Sunni is pink. So you can see it's a mixed city. This is what it looks like now. That yellow stuff is the Shiites. You see how there are hardly any mixed areas left, and the Sunnis are all forced down to Dora or off to the west? In January of 2007, so 6 months after that map, Baghdad was already 65% Shiite. When that's done, November 2007, Iraq is at least 75%. Baghdad is at least 75% Shiite. Now, when you read that the surge has calmed Iraq, that there's been a great success in tamping down violence, what the surge really coincided with was a massive ethnic cleansing of the Sunnis of Baghdad. Baghdad is a Shiite city now. And you can't go with those kinds of numbers, and you figure it's a city of 6.5 million. If you've got a shift of 10% that way, you're talking about 600,000 people being ethnically cleansed. They're killed, they're chased away, they're living in Amman, Jordan, or Damascus now, or with relatives up in Anbar, and so forth. So how has this happened is that the American surge, I believe, and this is a little bit speculative, but it's the only way I can understand it, the American surge concentrated on disarming the Sunni Arab population. Now, if you disarm the Sunni Arabs and the Shiite militias are still armed, and the Shiite militias want the Sunni Arabs gone, what's going to happen? Now the Sunni Arabs are defenseless. So that's what the surge really was. The surge, from an Iraqi point of view, equaled the ethnic cleansing of the Sunnis of Baghdad. And that's why the Sunni Arabs have withdrawn from the al-Maliki government, and that's why the people in Al-Anbar province and so forth are very happy that they have done so, because they said the al-Maliki government, in cahoots with the Americans, has presided over the end of Sunni Baghdad. I just said all that. And finally, I just want to finish up with the Kurdish issue, which is complex, and I've already said most of what I want to say about it. But that's sort of the demographic map of where the Kurds live. And you can see that they're not actually just in that Kurdistan Regional Authority region. They stretch into Turkey. They stretch down to Diyala province and over into Iran. There are even some in the Caucasus. There are 2 million in Syria. So if you really got this Kurdistan thing going as a new state in the region, and it was ethnically based, and it got all of the Kurds inside it, you're dismembering like 5 countries. And there's going to be trouble over that. And even just dismembering Iraq is going to cause trouble. And even just annexing large numbers of Sunni Arabs, Shiite and Sunni Turkmen into the Kurdistan Regional Authority, which is what happens if they grab Kirkuk, is going to cause a lot of trouble. Now, not only are they trying to get Kirkuk, and there's Kirkuk there, but they are also have their eye on Mosul, which is a Sunni Arab city of about 80% are Sunni Arab. And they've started giving safe haven to the Kurdish Workers' Party guerrillas. This is a radical, almost Pol Pot style movement of the 80s and 90s in southeastern Turkey. And, you know, you sympathize with the Kurds. They weren't treated well in Turkey. Turkey has this very strong kind of monochrome Turkish nationalism, so that they would even deny there are any Kurds. They wouldn't let the Kurds have newspapers. But they, and then the Kurds lived in the southwest, which is the poorest part of Turkey, and so forth. So they felt marginalized, and some of them joined this guerrilla movement. The guerrilla movement, I don't know, is extremely violent, and although the Turkish government was violent in putting it down as well, the guerrilla movement would kill local Kurds for what they called collaboration. So it killed almost as many Kurds, I think, as the Turkish government did. Now, this was a kind of war in southwestern Turkey all through the late, through the 80s and 90s, which kind of had settled down because the leader of it, Öcalan, was captured, and then a lot of Kurds have left Southwest and are guest workers in, well, not guest workers, but they're workers in Istanbul and elsewhere in the light textile industry. And there's not evidence in the polling. The political scientists have looked at Kurdish voting patterns. Not evidence in Turkey of a pan-Kurdish national sentiment. They tend to vote just like the people around them. They all speak fluent Turkish. They're binational in some ways, and their binationality is denied in important respects by the Turkish state. But there's been a little bit of opening to that. And anyway, the movement had settled down. But there were still like diehard fighters, about 5,000 or so, that wouldn't give up. And now the Kurdistan Regional Authority under Masoud Barzani in Iraq is giving them safe harbor. So as far as I can tell, they're going over and killing Turkish troops and then coming back and hiding in Iraq. And Turkey is a NATO ally of the United States. And in September alone, I think the PKK guerrillas killed 28 Turkish troops. Can you imagine what would happen if some guerrilla group came over the border into the United States from Tijuana and killed 28 U.S. troops? So the Turks want to invade. And so you've got a situation where a NATO ally wants to invade the country that we are militarily occupying in order to kill terrorists that we consider terrorists in the State Department who are being coddled by our main ally in Iraqi politics, which is the Iraqi Kurds.